Welcome to another episode of Sneaks, Rhymes, and Life. I am your host, Lionel McDonald. So, we are going to get into today's episode. So, for those that have seen me in person or seen me on Instagram, hit that subscribe button. But where I'm getting at is you've seen my hair. Um, I'm still a '90s kid at heart. Love the golden era of hip hop. Love obviously sneakers from the '90s, but I rock a high top fade, and that's not very common in 2021. So some people ask why. It's a hairstyle that I had when I was a teenager back in those times, but it would be inspired by none other than today's today's featured guest. And well, I wouldn't say guest because I don't want to hype you guys up. No, I didn't get one Antonio Hardy on this podcast. And I have got some great guests, but no, wasn't able to make this one work. But today's kind of a tribute episode to, and I will tell you, top three, one, I think, favorite MCs, and top three, I think, best MCs of all time. And that would be we call him BDK, we call him King Asiatic, no one's equal. We call him Dark Gable, which I don't know who calls him that at this point, but we're talking about Big Daddy Kane. And Big Daddy Kane, for a long time, probably has always had a spot in my top three when it came to lyricism, when it comes to just doing, we call the skill of emceeing different than anyone else. So for those that don't know, he by his birth name, Antonio Hardy. He recently had his birthday in September, but we know him as Big Daddy Kane. He's a rapper. He grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and is literally one of the greatest MCs of all time, of his generation, of this current generation, and literally has influenced the who's who of hip hop. From Eminem to Big L to Nas to Biggie to the list is endless, of those that talk about the influence of Big Daddy Kane. So there's a lot of information. He's got a great podcast that he started doing with he's the featured artist on season one. Did I ever tell you about a story when I think it's done by MC Search, and really gets into the nitty gritty of his life in Brooklyn and him growing up. But yes, Big Daddy Kane is one of those generational talents. Truly did emceeing different. Fast flow, slow flow, complex words, different rhyming patterns than almost anyone that ever was out there at the time. Really 88 and 89 were, I wouldn't say his apex, but probably at his biggest popularity. Had tremendous influence. When we talk about the greats of the late 80s and the early 90s, we're talking about Big Daddy Kane, Rakim, Chuck D, Ice Cube. I did mention Rakim, KRS-One. Like that was the upper echelon. Cool G Rap, like that's the upper echelon of emceeing, and no one did it with as much style and as much flair as Big Daddy Kane. So Big Daddy Kane, and I'll kind of give you a quick story about his history. He connected in the mid 80s with a good friend of his, the late Biz Markie, and they really collected and collaborated in New York. Biz Markie was already becoming a pretty big star, and Big Daddy Kane worked with him, collaborating with him on songs. They ultimately connected with the legendary Marley Marl, and started to record. I think around 1987, and I think the first single was an underground classic called Raw. This song ended up on Long Live the King, which is his debut album. But and that came out in '88. But the song that everyone will remember is "Ain't No Half Stepping." The video, I think it's his second single that came out on that album. Um, and he was traditionally known for his high top fade, his incredible dance moves, and at the same time being able to spit his lyrics like no one had really ever seen before. So if we fast forward, there was some really good success with his debut album. I think then we fast forward to the following year, and probably from in many respects his most polished piece of work, which was the Big Daddy thing. Now, me personally, as a Big Daddy Kane purist, I know he's even said in interviews that he doesn't believe that that's his best album. But I would go back to his debut album, Long Live the King. But a Big Daddy thing would be the album that he says is his best and his most polished album. So I think when you think about some of his samples that he used, this is where we kind of really got his flow and his piece of what we call the Smooth Operator song is probably one of the ones that stands out. It definitely gets the most play, the most the most run. You think about some of the songs between Mortal Kombat and Another Victory, Young, Gifted, and Black. Those are some of the ones that jump out. But Warming Up Kane, that was even a song that was used in Grand Theft Auto. Definitely, one of the high points of his career when that album came out, really established him as one of the greatest MCs. Now I know at that point, there was another MC also in New York, one Rakim Allah, part of the Eric B and Rakim contingent that was also tearing up New York, and there was a lot of, call it, competition of who was the best. Now I don't know if the artist saw it directly that way, but a lot of people talked about it. So, oh, what would happen if Kane battled Rakim? What would happen? Who would come out on top? Both flowed in a different way. They had their own unique style and way they wanted to do things, but it never came to be. They never really happened. Actually, Kane tells us, later in life that him and Eric B were really good friends. That being the DJ or the producer of Eric B and Rakim. But him and Rakim were never really cool. They've only really been cooled as in later years as elder statesmen of the hip hop game and legends of their time. That they really even talked or collaborated or talked about things. So very interesting to see, but that's one of those things. Even we talk about in today's world, we talk about verses. What would it be like if Rakim took on Big Daddy Kane? And I don't know if we could do it as a celebration. I think deep down, both guys, I definitely know Kane is, and I definitely know Rakim is. They're both a little competitive still, even although that their apexes of their careers was almost 30 years ago. It would be very interesting to see if that ever happened. So, needless to say, things kind of never really materialized. Big Daddy Kane then went on to make his third album, Taste of Chocolate. I know he was on a deal with his record company, and I know he definitely has cited that Taste of Chocolate probably wasn't his favorite project. Kind of rushed it. It was his third album in 3 years. Because I Can Do It Right was kind of the biggest song that was kind of the one that stuck out. Was Hard Being Kane was also a really good one. Me personally, this one was okay. He did have some really good producers. He had Prince Paul on a couple tracks. he actually started getting involved in producing in on his own. Definitely, Mr. C was instrumental all the way through his career. So there was Taste of Chocolate, and then Prince of Darkness um, was the fourth album, and again that one came out another year. So I don't know if you really could feel that Kane had rushed some of his albums. Now he did have some really good tracks on it, and um, some pieces that were definitely some songs I loved that were on this album. So Raw 91, uh, uh, Get Busy was another one. Brother was another one I had on that album that I loved hearing. Troubled Man is an underrated track on my perspective, and Come On Down. So in 91, this is before Tribe was just hitting the stride and really didn't know a lot about Busta, but he had Q-Tip and Busta on a track. So those are a couple songs that definitely resonated with me. But Groove It or Groove with It, and then Lover and You were kind of the two big songs. I think this is probably the lowest rated Kane album, but I think he definitely bounced back. Although people don't like it nearly as much as I do, Looks Like a Job for I thought was an amazing album. He got Trackmasters, and this is Trackmasters just kind of got it popping. So there was How You Could Get a Record Deal, The Beef Is On, Stop Shamming, Brother Man were a couple really good songs that were on it. Large Professor did a track on it. There was the Nuff Respect You remix. So Nuff Respect You is one of those when people thought, Kane is not what Kane was. Kane did a song called Nuff Respect, and it ended up being on the Juice soundtrack. Now, I love the movie Juice. Juice is, in my opinion, one of the best movies that are inspired by hip hop culture of all time, and to me, it's still a personal favorite. Um, but yeah, I will really tell you that that song it sounds incredible. It is one of Kane's very best songs. I think I have a CD here in the studio here, and it's called the Rap. It's like a Kane mixtape um, that was made. I don't even remember which DJ made it, but yeah, enough respect. The original and the remix are both on this, and totally a dope track. Even Hank Shockley from the Public Enemy days got involved in making that song. So pretty amazing that song got got a lot of play. And I think I go back to, one of the songs, maybe the catchiest songs that Kane has ever made. And I go back to why people love It's a Big Daddy Thing. He did a joint with Teddy Riley. And I don't know if you guys know the song, but I Get the Job Done. Teddy Riley, this is probably when I really figured out, because this is right around the same time as Rum Shaker. I really figured out that Teddy Riley was an incredible and a special producer when that album came out. Kane fast forward, then went to his Daddy's Home was his next album. Did have some good tracks. In the PJs was kind of the ones that stood out. That was also the single. But I did love Brooklyn Style. That again, Easy Mo B did that one, and in his last album, now he did do a variety of different things. But Veterans Day was an album that didn't get a lot of love, but I thought it was a really good album. Like Pure, Uncut and Pure was a dope track, and I definitely was a fan of it, and it still am to this day. So then you really wonder, what did Kane do? Like, that was his last album, 98. Like, so what did he do? Well, there are a lot of things that kind of happened along the way and through his journey, not just his discography. Um, So, first of all, I think one of the most memorable things that took Kane to a whole new level is after he connected with Marley Marl, and there's the story that I recently heard is him talking, and him got talking with Master Ace, and you know Master Ace and Craig G, and Master Ace was kind of the new one to call it the Juice Crew. You know, Cool G Rap and Craig G did their own thing, and then obviously Kane and Biz were a thing, and Chubb Rock kind of knew them from around the way, but decided to put this track down. And when they went to record this song called the Symphony, it was for this Marley Marl album that was being created. And that would have been In Control. I believe it was volume one. And actually was they didn't know what they feel about Master Ace, and Master Ace is like, screw it, I'm just gonna go in the booth and just record a verse, and yeah, after Marley Marl asked him to jump on it, and he recorded, and it was like they instantly earned his respect, and it was dope. But I think when you get to all the verses, I think you heard Craig G on his, Cool G Rap definitely goes in heavy, but we knew it at that time in the juncture of hip hop, the guy that got the last verse was the guy that was kind of the heavy hitter, or the top dog in the crew. And Kane laces us one of the most memorable verses in the history of hip hop. At the last 16 of the symphonies. So that really helped set his career off and running. So some little known facts that you don't know about Kane, and Kane had definitely collaborated with a lot of people. He did a song with Patti LaBelle. Also did an appearance with her and ended up on another single. Definitely worked. In '91, he actually won a Grammy. So most people don't know that. We talk about real hip hop artists don't win Grammys. But I think we think of Eminem, or we think of Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff. But back in '91, Big Daddy Kane did a collaboration with Quincy Jones on an album, Back on the Block, and the album actually won Best Rap Performance by a duo or a group. So he ended up winning a Grammy for that. So pretty amazing. Kane also did a lot of collaborations with a variety of different different R&B artists. So you see him show up on a few guest shots here, there, and around the way. And then I think two people I think you really you really want to think about that you may not have remembered that he worked with, or he thought were really good. So first off, the late Big L, and I know I mentioned it on previous podcasts, but Big L was an artist out of Harlem. Released his first album. Was working on his second album, The Big Picture, and then unfortunately was murdered on the streets of Harlem, and had left this earth. But whether the song, I think it's still, I don't know if I have the exact details, but he was working on an album called The Big Picture. It was to be Big L's time. Big L was uber talented, as lyrically ferocious as anyone on the planet, and had worked very closely with Jay-Z and a few others. But there's a song that Kane has with Big L, which is absolutely legendary. Really, again, one of the standout cuts from the album, The Big Picture. It's unfortunate that we never got to really see Big L's time and what that really looked like, because it is actually a pretty amazing album. The song actually is called Platinum Plus, and unfortunately, although the album is incredibly dope, came out in 2000, this is unfortunately something that we never really got to see the video and everything that could have happened for this album because of the passing of Big Al. So the other fact or really piece is one of the biggest cheerleaders of arguably the biggest and greatest artist, not just hip hop artist, but artist period, and one of the richest, one Sean Carter, otherwise known as Jay-Z. Kane was an exceptional and a huge fan of Jay-Z and help Jay-Z get his career off the ground. So I remember from what I read, they met in the early 90s. Jay-Z went on tour with Kane. Kane really kind of showed him the ropes. Wasn't really a hype man, but definitely had Jay-Z on stage and really worked with him to develop his skill and gave him opportunities to be out there. There is a song "Show and Prove," which Jay-Z is on, and I think it led to a lot of great things when we talk about the growth of Jay-Z's career. I think I just mentioned Big L. Like those are two of the artists that really helped set Jay-Z up to what Reasonable Doubt, along with DJ Clark Kent. That's what three of the biggest influences to what that album actually looked like, and really springboarding Jay-Z into the hip hop and cultural mogul that he's now become, right? So you fast forward into the 2000s again, Big Daddy Kane really did a lot of collaborations. He was on a Tony Touch piece. He did some joints with Alchemist. There was a track called "The Man" that was dope by any type of way. Primo produced track that was a banger. And then what was a really special moment in 2005 that Big Daddy Kane was honored by VH1 as part of Hip Hop Honors. So this is when we really recognize a hip hop artist for the exceptional contributions to the culture. So they had multiple artists come out and perform some of his music. Black Thought, T.I., I think Common was involved in that. I think they actually did Warm It Up Kane, which was pretty amazing. So I think Kane continued to move through and do a variety of other guest shots over the next several years. You've actually seen that you've seen, even in the 2010s, you saw the late MF Doom. You saw him collaborate, at least once with Big Daddy Kane and Master Ace. So pretty amazing to see. What was also really cool to see was is that Kane really has continued to tour, and I think I remember seeing Kane way back in. I was living back in Toronto, so I want to tell you it was like 2012, 2013. He performed at the Old Government establishment that many of us have seen shows at. And, so this man, was one of the greatest performers I've ever seen. He was doing all his moves. He was dancing. He had Scoob and Scrap with him, which is kind of his dance pack that he had. Breath control, lyricism, stage presence. It was like he was definitely a bucket list MC. And when you sometimes see who you love and who you really want to perform, because you've been a fan for so long, and sometimes they let you down. And this was an opportunity for easily that to happen. I heard about this show at the last minute. I was sitting with a bunch of friends. It's like, I'm leaving. I'm not missing a chance to see Kane. And I ultimately went to see the show. And this show was well beyond the expectation of how good a performer I thought he was. I truly never really appreciated how good he was until I actually got to see him. So when you think about, again, Kane and his legacy, so many people across the board, from RZA to Kumo D to so many other people. We talk about Kane easily in your top 5 of influential, skilled MCs, and he deserves a lot of love. He deserves a lot of props of how good he was, and particularly his first 2 albums really was the blueprint of what led to, call it, the golden era of hip hop. Eminem which is one of the greatest MCs that we've ever seen, whether you like him or not. Um, Definitely attributes Big Daddy Kane to a lot of things. When you talk about Big Daddy Kane, you also have to remember he's actually been in a variety of different movies. He was in Meteor Man. He was in Dave Chappelle's uh, uh, movie called The Block Party, where they kind of just did a show and they filmed the whole thing and they showed you backstage. He was in that. That was a lot of fun. Another Day, Love Is for Sale, Exposed. He was actually, showed up on Law and Order as well. So Kane's no joke. Kane is been around the way and done a lot of different things. So hats off to Kane. So again, that Did I Ever Tell You? If you never listened to that podcast done by MC Search, you definitely should check it out. So again, this Brooklyn MC is, has this, incredible musical career. He's worked with so many people, and really, I still love the song "Burn Hollywood Burn." It's on "Fear of a Black Planet" with with uh, with Ice Cube and Public Enemy, obviously, because it's their album. It's one of my favorite hip hop songs that I've ever heard. So you definitely, if you've never heard that one, you got to go check it out. And then I think, when you start to hear, and I just kind of I was kind of talking about Kane, and just trying to get ready for this podcast. Some things that I just learned about him that I never really knew, right? So um one of the interesting things about Kane is, Kane has obviously been someone that, loves ladies and then loves the opposite sex. And he was, definitely was, he was in Playgirl at one point. He definitely has done, he was definitely all in Madonna's book, and they talk about, a variety of different things that he got involved with Madonna and Naomi Campbell, and yeah, that's a whole different thing. He's designed shoes, and can say that these loafers are the favorite thing that I've ever seen. But yeah, he's definitely he's done a bunch of different things. And then one of the wildest stories I heard, I still remember hearing this in the '90s, and then apparently it was a lie. It was somehow it got reported and Oprah talked about it, but apparently that Kane had AIDS in the early '90s, and then essentially it was a totally false rumor that came out. So a lot of different things when we talk about Big Daddy Kane, and and him and all the different things he's gotten involved in, and continues to be a major influence, continues to give back to the culture, continues to perform. You've seen some of these variety of different streams you've seen, being able to see Kane perform and do some amazing things, particularly during the pandemic. I think for me, he even got more magnified. And again, he does show really good content on Instagram. So Kane, mad love, one of my favorites, always will be. Wear my Kane gear, and continue to rock my high top fade, because I'm a huge fan. But shout out to the Kane, and again, long live the Kane. Thank you for another episode of Sneaks Rhymes of Life. That's Lionel McDonald. I'm out. Peace.